Hello, Intellivision Touch controller. In this video the news of update 1.10. So let's go. In this version we have 4 new features. The first is that it was included in the connection options, a output emulating a gamepad. The second is that these connection options, when selected, are now written to the controller's non-volatile memory, so that they are active the next time the controller is started. The third, the analog center, which was detected as plus 10%, now with plus 15%, for better comfort in the use of the directional pad. And the latest novelty is that in the pause menu and configuration selection 6 function buttons for the emulator controller have been added. This update is already available. The link will be there in our WhatsApp group. Just consult there with us. In the case of this update, there are 2 files required. Once these 2 files are downloaded, and connecting the controller with the USB data cable to your computer, just send these 2 files to the Intellivision Touch drive, or copy through the file manager, and replace these 2 files in the controller. At the end of the file copy, the controller will automatically restart, but for this update it is necessary after that to turn the controller off and on again for the update to be active. However, to enter the menu, you keep double-clicking on the central button of the D-pad. Here it connected as a USB power cable, connected to a power supply, to a cell phone charger. Only the console connection option is available. All the other 3 USB options are disabled. These connection settings are now written to memory, so the next time the controller starts, it loads in the last option that was selected. The exception, of course, is that in the case that a USB connection was selected and was now connected without USB data, then it automatically goes back to console setting. Here the controller connected with USB data cable on the computer. We have the emulation options of USB keyboard, Player 1 and Player 2, and the gamepad emulation setting. All of them are active, so the computer already receives the connection of a USB keyboard and a gamepad. Then we select which option we want to use. This new gamepad option adds a possibility of use in other emulators. In the main ones the keyboard connection works very well, but we have cases, for example of the Mr. FPGA, where in the graphical interface it is not possible to configure the 16 positions of the directional pad through keyboard emulation. It only accepts the 4-position configuration, and from them it composes the other 8. In the case of the gamepad, the directional pad is sent to the USB in an analog way, so any equipment will recognize this directional pad with all analog positions. And the gamepad is configured with the 15 keyboard and action buttons. So here the controller is selected with the gamepad USB connection option, and here on the Windows Game Controller's utility screen, it will recognize the gamepad as CircuitPython HID name. If there is more than one controller connected, they will appear with the same name, but in the order in which they were connected. Here you have the fully analog directional pad, with all the positions and including the tilt. And the buttons B1, B2, B3. And the keyboard with the button 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. About the configuration of the emulators, let's go to Nostalgia. Entering here in the controller options. This file has already been updated, so it will be available there to replace. Here is the keyboard emulation setting for Player 1. So if you select USB keyboard Player 1, it will be worth this key setting here. And even the set of keys for the emulator to recognize keyboard emulation. It's the same thing for Player 2, only it's another mapping, the other keys, for the 2 to be able to play at the same time. And here already configured the joystick buttons, which are the gamepad buttons. The analog stick he already recognizes, so you don't need to configure the directional pad here, just the buttons. And here in the joystick selection, we can select the gamepad, which is the CircuitPython HID. So here it's going to work with the gamepad. Here is a gamepad, using the test ROM. It already recognizes the analog stick, with the 16 positions, the action buttons, and the keyboard working in the gamepad function, in the same way as we have with the keyboard emulation. As a joke here, I'm going to select the gamepad for Player 1 and Player 2. Running the test ROM here, we have the only gamepad working in the two-player role. Here, speaking of the JZEnv emulator, the mapping configuration file has also been updated, adding here the mapping of the gamepad buttons. The analog he already recognizes, so he doesn't need to configure it here, using the graphical interface, but if it's on another platform, the command line is this. The graphical interface simply generates this line here to make it easier. Here using the configuration file. No need to set up the joysticks. Here we will see the ROM working. Here also working all the commands, all the gamepad buttons, and the analog stick being recognized with all 16 positions. Between the outputs of keyboard emulation, Player 1, Player 2 or gamepad emulation, it depends on your preference, your need for the emulator. All these options will be working smoothly for you. And the latest novelty, the function buttons for the emulator's controller. Added the 6 main emulator controller function keys. So for example, F1 on JZEnv works like quit. The F11 is the reset in Nostalgia. The F12, the reset on JZEnv. Space is usually the exit in the emulation station. Pause works for most emulators. And enter usually works as a start in RetroPie. So here double-click on the D-pad button to open the menu. And being in one of the USB connection options, whether it is keyboard Player 1, Player 2 or gamepad, then we have available here the 6 controller function keys of the emulator. So for example, I'm running Nostalgia here and I know that F11 is the reset, so I want to reset the game. I go into the configuration menu and press the F11 key here, and it will reset there in the emulator and return here to the game screen. So, I want to do a reset. Double-click here, entered the configuration menu. Just press the position here on top of the F11. It's going to reset there. So, here is the news of Update 1.10. To update your controller, just call an agent there in the WhatsApp group, and there will be the link there for you to download and update your controller. That's it. Thanks.